Okay, so I think let's start and let the people join. Am I audible, Bhakti? Bhakti?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you. So, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. A very warm welcome to all of you. And on behalf of Paleo ECR India and Paleo ECR India event coordination team, I, Arvind Shukla,
Sound
welcome, welcome you all to another session of Paleo ECR India Saturday Talk Series. This talk series was basically, as I told many times, it was initiated with the aim of creating an inclusive and interactive platform where the ECRs and established scientists can come together to share the ideas, discuss the cutting edge sciences, research, and foster collaboration across the broad spectrum of value sciences and accessible sciences. So, before we begin, I will give a few brief announcements. So, kindly keep your microphones muted throughout the talk, and please post your questions and queries in the chat box or use the like raise hand in the feature. And the talk will be approximately 40 to 45 minutes, and after that we will have a separate 15 to 20-minute Q&A session where you can ask the questions by raising your hand or writing the question in the chat box, and then they will reach out to you one by one. Now, it's my great pleasure to introduce the today's speaker, Dr. Rakesh Kumar Rout. So, Dr. Rakesh is a geologist and isotope geochemist, and currently a postdoctoral fellow at Ariel University, Israel. He completed his Ph.D. in 2025 from IISER Pune, focusing on the pyrite oxidation and carbonate weathering in Indian River and their implication for the geological global carbon cycle. He holds a bachelor's degree in geology from Utkal University, Odisha, and Masters of Science in Geology from Banaras Hindu University, BHU. His research interest focuses on sulfide and organic matter oxidation in the Himalayas and the role in regulating the global carbon cycle, integrating the dissolved sulfide isotope systematic, Himalayan weathering, paleoclimate reconstruction, and Holocene Asian dust dynamic. So today, Dr. Rout will present his talk, which is titled as the Pyrite Oxidation in the Northwestern Himalayan Rivers, Sun Oxygen Isotopic Evidence for Long-Term CO2 Sources. So on behalf of Paleo ECR, sincerely thanks Dr. Rout for accepting our invitation. And with this, I warmly invite you to begin your talk. Thank you, everyone. Please enjoy the talk. Rakesh, now you can share the slides.
Yeah, just a minute. I'll just share. Is my slides are visible?
Yeah, perfect. They're going well.
It's moving, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so good morning and good evening to all of you. Thanks for joining. I'd like to thank all the members of the Paleo ECR community, and special thanks to Dr. Shukla for this invitation. And yeah, I'll be talking about pyrite oxidation in the northwestern Himalayan rivers, and specifically their implication to global carbon cycle, and mostly focusing on the sulfur and oxygen isotope of sulfates. So, the previous talks that you have already attended, and I was also attending very excellent talks by Dr. Banerjee and Dr. Jena regarding their abrupt climatic events in Holocene and Atlantic meridional oscillation. So those talks are mainly focusing towards a kilo-year time scale. So let's move towards a millennial time scale. And I'll take you to the very interesting part of the our Indian continent subcontinent hub, that is the also called water tower of Asia. It's the third pole, also sometimes called. It's the Great Himalaya. and how their weathering, particularly when water interaction happens there, how they impact the global carbon cycle. So that will be my talk. So before going in the detail, I just like to show you, like in this cartoon diagram, you can see when the protolith, like it's a parent rock. When we have I'm talking about a very trace lithology, that is the pyrite. So when it comes to the regolith, that is like when you weather a parent rock, it will form a regolith. So during this process, so these are the like various steps you see, like till the atomic level and molecule level you see. So when pyrite is here, when it is coming to here, how it affects the global climate, or particularly the global carbon cycle. So before going in detail, I'll give a brief background behind this study and the motivation behind this study. So as I mentioned, I'll be talking about CO2 cycle, that is a greenhouse gas we know. And it's we are talking I'm starting from this point, like the weathering and CO2 cycle link. It's Earth's thermostat. Why I'm talking that, I'll be coming subsequently. So when you are talking about a cycle, we see about input and output both. But yeah, before that, I must introduce the subject. Like our planet is very special in multiple aspects, and one of these is the content of the greenhouse gas, and particularly the CO2 level. So it's in a delicate balance. Like it's not very high like Venus, it's not very low like Mercury, and that is the reason why we are having a very habitable planet, and we are having water in liquid form. Our life is possible here, and many more that things. So the one aspect is the carbon cycle. There are many aspects to that why it is so, but one aspect is the carbon cycle. So so how this balance happened? Like if you see in a millennial time scale when Earth formed, so during that time, so that is the input you see, like from the lithosphere, like from the mantle, you are generating the CO2 through the volcanic degassing. It is coming to the atmosphere, like from the lithosphere, the CO2 is coming to the atmosphere. And there are processes like particularly silicate weathering, they take back to the CO2 to the lithosphere again. So this is the cycle you see, like it coming, this is the input, and this is the output, and this is the input. So this way, Earth maintains its thermostat, like the temperature is in optimal condition, because it's a greenhouse gas. If it will be highly increased, the temperature will increase. So this is the mechanism we so far knew. Like yes, like this is the process people knew during that time. It is the process and which is affecting the carbon cycle and ultimately the global temperature. So let's know like how volcanic degassing is very obvious. The CO2 is coming from the interior of the earth to the atmosphere, but how the silicate weathering is happening. So this is a schematic diagram you can see. So it starts from the atmosphere. You see like this is the precipitation is happening. It's a very ideal condition. What happened, like it takes the reaction happen between the H2O and the CO2, and they form the carbonic acid. So it's a natural acid, very abundant acid in our planet, and in our earth surface process, you can say this is the dominant acid it affects. So what happens actually, once you form the carbonic acid, so it decays and it generates a H plus ion. So there are a lot of, it's not very straightforward. There are multiple intermediate steps to that, which I did not show. So just imagine like this H2CO3 is coming and it interacting with a calcium silicate rock. So in our surface of the earth, you have a lot of rocks, but silicate is dominant, we know. And yeah, so when it interacts with the silicate, so the H plus ion we will have, so they will interact with they will break the calcite bond in the calcium silicates, and what they will release actually, calcium bicarbonate and H2SO3 in aqueous form, right? So these are the constituents or the solutes. So they like transport like from the river, like the river is flowing through the like bringing those solutes to the ocean. And in the ocean, what the things is happening, like you have a calcium, you have HCO3, your HCO3 breaks again, so they will form a CO3 2 minus like this molecule, and that will combine again with calcium, and they form the calcium carbonate. So in this process, what happens is like you give back 1 mole CO2 to the atmosphere. So I started from 2 mole of CO2, and you are seeing we are leaving 1 mole of CO2. So in this process, you are like seeing like 1 mole of CO2 is getting trapped in the lithosphere. So this is the whole net reaction. You see like you see a calcium silicate, and you see 1 mole of CO2, that is the net CO2, and then you form a calcium carbonate. And in this process, what is happening actually, you take you are from the atmosphere, you are locking the CO2 in the lithosphere. So you see, like it's a long-term CO2 sink. It doesn't happen in a one day. It happens. Sorry, it happens through time. So with time, what happens, like you are like the silicate weathering is getting taking a lot of CO2 from the atmosphere. So it's a long-term sink of CO2. So that we understood, so far, like people understood, yes, that is a dominant process, and there is a growing number of interest to understand that processes. But then in 1990s, a very famous hypothesis came, that's the Remo and Rudiman. What they suggested, these like when the Himalayas formed, like you can see about 50 million years the Himalayas started forming, and we are eroding a lot of silicates because the upliftment rate is high, we all know, and we have a lot of physical erosion there, and that is the reason why we have a lot of CO2 drawdown. And because the process I just mentioned, like you have more silicate weathering, you will consume more CO2, and that lead to a global Cenozoic cooling. You see, like this is the trend of the global surface temperature. It is getting like drastically reduced in the last 40-50 million years, and they attributed mainly because of the Cenozoic mountain belt, particularly Himalaya and STP mountains. They have a great role in controlling this thing. So people understood, yes, this is the process which is affecting the global carbon cycle, particularly Himalaya weathering is affecting the CO2 cycle. And this is the compilation what studied has been done it. And you see, like the Himalayan rivers have very high CO2 consumption potential than the global rivers, or than your Tibetan rivers or any other rivers. So we understood, yes, Himalayan rivers has a role in controlling this carbon cycle and the global carbon cycle. But the emerging views came out in the recent days, like in the last 2020, there was a famous paper came in Nature, like Hilton and West. They suggested, like, yes, silicate weathering is happening, but in addition to silicate weathering, in this schematic diagram, if you see, so there are other processes which is happening in tandem with silicate weathering, like sulfide oxidation and organic carbon oxidation. So they just counterbalance the CO2 drawdown through the silicate weathering. Like you see, these are the numbers. So like these are in megaton carbon per year. So if silicate weathering is about 50 to 70, let's say, imagine. So it's about 40 you can release through sulfide oxidation, and organic oxidation can give you about 70 megaton carbon per year. So they summarize, yes, there are things like silicate weathering and organic carbon barrier, but there are sources sulfide oxidation or sulfuric acid mediated carbonate weathering. I'll discuss that in a detailed way, and organic oxidation. So in this talk, I'll focus mostly on the sulfuric acid mediated carbonate weathering. And of course, my PhD was fully dedicated to understand that process and how it affects the global carbon cycle. So this after this emerging views, like sulfide oxidation get an attention, although people identified, yes, there is a process, but yes, quantification was missing, and we need to understand that process because it's affecting the global carbon cycle. So moving on towards the pyrite oxidation, I'm telling it's a source of CO2. So how it happens? So if you imagine, say, very schematic diagram, you see a pyrite crystal, which is a crystallized in isometric system. It's a very cubic crystal, you see, and this is the atomic structure, like sulfur, iron, you see, it's atomic structure, the isometric system that they crystallize. So then you see, when you oxidize it through water, oxygen, or through aqueous or through atmospheric oxygen, so ultimately you will find a sulfuric acid. So this is the reaction you see, like you have a pyrite, you oxidize it through water or oxygen, then you form a sulfuric acid. So that sulfuric acid, if you put on a carbonates, it will release a significant CO2 to the atmosphere. So this CO2 release is happening in a, again, in a like, although it will be very quick, but yes, it is happening. It was happening. So we need to understand that. So this process, they, like earlier studies, they have separated or distributed in two ways. Like this is the aerobic oxidation and anaerobic oxidation. Aerobic means you oxidize directly through the atmosphere oxygen, that will be aerobic oxidation. If you oxidize through water oxygen, that will be anaerobic oxidation. But anyway, whatever the oxidation pathways, once you oxidize it, it will form sulfuric acid, and then it will interact when the carbonate rocks, particularly carbonate rocks, they will release CO2. So this step doesn't happen in very straightforward that I have shown you. It's for the sake of understanding. But yes, there are multiple. It's a complex geochemical process. It happens through multiple intermediate steps, and then you form sulfuric acid and then the CO2 ultimately. So when we're starting, sulfide oxidation, we need to know like what are the controlling factors and how it affects and those things. So people from the limited data sets, there are studies who shows like these pathways are very intense in this cooler climate, where the glacier coverage are very huge glacier coverage are there, and they are very limited in the floodplain areas. So these diagram you see like. This is the source side, this is the sink side. So you can understand like the star marker, the various locations. So you see like if it is in the mountainous region, it is a source, and floodplain, you can say it's a sink of CO2. So these are some of the studies from the limited isotopic studies from the global scale, but yeah, there are studies. And then other controlling factor is, so from this we understand, yes, glacier coverage has a role. And when you'll find a more glacier coverage with high physical erosion, you will have a more sulfide oxidation. So that is probably that is the first order control they have for the oxidation of pyrites. And the other thing is people try to correlate that like the oxidation rate versus physical erosion. So they found a very linear correlation, and they attributed it to the like more physical erosion, the and more oxidation rate you will have. So so this was the like main controlling factors we understood from the literature. And the limited data set also showed like from the global rivers whether they are source or sink. Of course we have a interest to know that, so people have done from the global studies, like from the global rivers, particularly Liu, Ganga, Brahmaputra and Mackenzie. You see like this is the release part and this is the offtake. You see there are always a higher release than the offtake. So this offtake rate, this release rate, how it is affecting in a millennial timescale the global carbon cycle, that has been also linked. So people have done that, and you can see in the last 50 million year, you have a lot. This is the CO2, PCO2 level of the atmosphere, and which has been like generated through proxy-based studies. And these are the silicate weathering proxy, like strontium isotope you take radiogenic strontium for the silicate weathering index, and osmium isotope you take for black cell and those weathering. So you see when we are talking Himalaya timescale, which is about 40-50 million year, you see like our CO2 was decreasing. Yes, it was decreasing, but there are a lot of up downs. That is one part. And the last 15 million year, it's somehow stable. And like it is not very like it is not in a very declining stage. So in this paper by Torres et al., so what they have argued, like when silicate weathering was happening, it was increasing. Yes, it was increasing, but during that time, there are another proxy they have used, that is the osmium isotope, which is an index for black cell weathering. So black cell is the rock where our pyrite sits, and if you are seeing your black cell is higher, so they attributed the pyrite would have been there, and it would have been releasing a lot of sulfuric acid and a lot of CO2 is coming out of that. So particularly this time period, this last 15 million year, if you see, we are generating a lot of CO2 to the atmosphere, and that's why we are finding a very stable trend. We are not finding a very declining trend with that. So I think I would have conveyed that yes, it has a role because it's controlling the global carbon cycle. So we need to study it in a better way. Although studies are there, but the data sets are the scarcity of data set are still there, and particularly for Himalayan region, we have very limited data sets. We need to understand it in a better way to address the all the controlling factors in a more detailed way, and how their quantification and everything you need to do it in a detail. So keeping this background motivation behind the study, like what are the, so these are the backgrounds and why it intend us to do this kind of studies. So we define three objectives particularly. So special distribution of pyrite oxidation in the said water basin. So then the net effect of chemical erosion in the northwestern Himalayan rivers, and then intensity of the sulfide oxidation in the other weathering processes in the peninsular Indian, whether they have a role in peninsular Indian rivers or not. So these are the three objectives we define. So the study area that we took, it is from the northern part of India. It's in the said water, and we decided to do this area mainly. There are multiple reasons to that. One of that is the high glacier coverage we had, as I just mentioned, where you find more glacier coverage, you'll have a higher oxidation rate. So that is one part, and we saw like there are a lot of lithologies where enriched pyrite ferrous limestones are there, and black cells are there. So we saw like in this, it is a lithological map you can see. And those are actually the one part. And the other part is there are some study in the lower part of the Indus they have done a great job by Karim Bhajar. What they have done is like they measure their sulfur and oxygen isotopic study. Although the study was not estimating this oxidation rate and so, but yes, the data was available. And we took all these data sets with our data set, like that was the objective, and to answer all in a basinal scale how this oxidation is happening and how it is affecting the carbon cycle. So this is like we did a very high resolution spatial sampling from the headwater of the Indus, considering from the tributaries and mainstreams, everything we collected, and all the sources like rainwater, glacier melt, snow melt, and hot springs, any anthropogenic what are there in the lower side. So everything we collected to understand how this effect oxidation rate is happening there. So yeah, this is our study area. So before going the detailed discussion regarding the geochemistry, I will say the approach we have taken. Although I was told to discuss more towards the stable isotope, but because of time constraint, I could not cover that. But yes, I'll just briefly touch those isotopic aspects. So when you are talking when anything happened, you go for a radiogenic isotopes. Like when in which time it happened, you go for a radiogenic isotope. It will answer you the exact timing. But if you want to know how the thing happen, what are the processes happen, go for a stable isotope. It will answer you all the details regarding the process, how it happened, and what are the main factors that are influencing. So those stable isotope will help you. So here in throughout my talk, I'll be talking about sulfur and oxygen isotopic systematics. So they are the two stable isotope systematics. You see like sulfur has four stable isotopes, 32, 33, 34, and 36. So of course in isotope geochemistry, what we do, the more abundant one we consider, like that's the reason why we take a ratio between 34/32. And then that ratio we measure, we have a sophisticated isotopic facilities, like where you can measure the mass spectrometer facilities. So there you just measure the ratios, and then after measuring the ratio, you convert it, you compare with a international standard, that is the VCDT for sulfur, and VSMO for oxygen, and then you convert it to per mil, because the isotopic variation is very lesser, and you need to convert it in a you just multiply in 1000, that is per mil. So then you can express the numbers, because that is a standard number you are comparing, and then you can compare with different studies. And similarly, for if you go for oxygen, we have three stable isotopes, 16, 17, and 18. So again, we take 18/16, and yeah, the similar process we do. So moving on towards the isotopic approach, what we have done. So, I just showing the reactions, you saw like there was a lot of CO2 releasing, and in addition to that, we have a sulfate. So that sulfate is our interest. If I know the exact sulfate amount, how much is coming from pyrite particularly, then I can talk about how much CO2 is getting released. So that is the concept. So sulfate is already complicated. The main problem is that is like sulfate can be supplied from multiple sources. Like you see this diagram, like it can come from gypsum, it can come from pyrites. But in addition to that, there are other sources like atmosphere, your anthropogenic, like multiple sources are there. And you cannot just measure in a river the sulfate and just tell this much CO2 is releasing, because these are the process which is complicating it. So you need to tease apart each sources, like you have to apportion each sources, and then you can understand exactly how much coming from pyrite that you have to take to do the calculation of CO2 estimations. So we need to understand that. So for that, isotopes actually helping a lot, and they are robust tool. And mainly, so if you see after correction of other sources, if you take for pyrite gypsum, so they have for particular delta 34 sulfur, you see it's about 10 to minus 50 per mil, considering all type of pyrites we have in lithology. And then you see for gypsum, it is in a positive side, that is 10 to 35 per mil. So you see like this kind of variation we have, like two end members we have, where you can do a mass balance, you can do an inverse model, you can do a lot to understand how much exactly the pyrite sulfur. But the one other part of this complication is again like sulfur, you see like for igneous sulfide is about plus 10 to minus 10 per mil, but for sedimentary sulfide also in that range, like it is in higher range although, but it is overlapping sometimes. So to avoid that, we combine like people started combining dual isotopic studies, like you combine a sulfur plus oxygen of that sulfate, because in sulfate you have a oxygen also. So you take the isotope of sulfur, you take the isotope of oxygen. Why I'm telling oxygen? Because if you involve oxygen, you can know the process, like as I showed, like aqueous versus atmospheric, how it has, how the oxidation has happened. In addition to that, it also narrowed down the isotopic numbers. Like you see for gypsum, it's about 15 per mil, but for pyrite, of course, there is no like n member, like the well defined n member, but yes, it is in the lower side, 2 to 4 per mil, in that range you will find. So like it narrows down the isotopic number. So dual isotopic studies helps a lot to understand these processes. The another approach what we do once we measure the isotopic numbers, so we do a inverse modeling. So I'll not go in a detail to that, but I'll just briefly explain how I do the like this kind of studies. So in water, if you measure a sulfur isotope or you measure delta sulfur, so then we write these kind of equations, like the sulfur can come from rain, from pyrite, from gypsum, from hot spring. You have any other sources, just add here, and their corresponding isotopic n members, you just either you measure or you take from literature, whatever is there. Just take that and write these kind of equations, and then we put a well-defined inverse model we have. It will run through these isotope, it will run through these equations, like and it will find a best fit solution for each n members, and it will give you, if I tell you a very simply way, it can give you how much exact sulfate is coming from pyrite, like the fraction we'll get, and that fraction you take and multiply with the sulfate, total sulfate, you'll get the exact fraction of sulfate derived from pyrite. So that was the whole idea. And this kind of inversion we do, and also we do a Monte Carlo simulation. And again, I will not go in a detailed way, but what we do, we write this kind of so these equations are very well defined, and people have these numbers, like FO2 means the fraction of oxygen which is coming from atmosphere, that is about 0 to 17%, you see, and this is FS2 is fraction of oxygen coming from water. So people have done this, it's about 83%. Like you need oxygen, right, to oxidize a pyrite. So where the oxygen is coming. So people have done this in laboratory experiments, and they found this kind of numbers. So we had the opportunity to take that number and run a Monte Carlo simulation with these parameters. So these are the fractionation factor. When you talk about a stable isotope or thing, we need to know how much fractionation factor is involved. So that also well defined. So we consider all these fractionation factors and the n members what we have, and then we run for a Monte Carlo simulation, and we give 10,000 iteration or so, and then to understand how much delta sulfate of pyrite is there, then you put this sulfate pyrite here and then do an inversion and do understand how much. The whole way, these are the exercise we do after getting the data to understand the each fraction from different n members. Okay. So moving on to the water chemistry. So in hydrochemistry, what we do this kind of mixing plots where you take calcium and magnesium versus their index of the silicate weathering, like N star and so, and then we plot that together, and to understand, like there are two n member you see, like these are our samples and these are the earlier studies, like the gray circles. So you see this is the silicate n member if I combine completely, and this is the carbonate n member. In lithosphere, we have these two dominant in the surface of the crust. You see these kind of two dominant n members. So these we are finding like they are in between these two n members, which shows like they have the solutes have been deriving from these two n members. So one part. Then the other part is what are the acids involved in? I was just telling about sulfuric acid, carbonic acid. These are the two natural acids. So you have the this kind of diagram called the Piper diagram, where you can plot all these data sets and to know like what are the acid involved in this weathering of these rocks. So you see like between sulfuric carbonate is weathering by H2SO4 and carbonate weathering by H2CO3. These are the two n members where our samples are falling. So some sort of explains there are involvement of sulfuric acid, which is contributing to the weathering of this in this terrain. So moving on to the isotopic distribution inside the in the basinal scale, if you see like this is the elevation in color coded, and it's a delta 34 sulfur versus chlorine bisulfate. So for the higher elevated sample, you see we have a negative isotopic systematics. As you were just explaining, if you have a negative isotopic numbers, that will indicate towards the pyrite oxidation. Not exactly, but yes, there you can get a sense. If it is negative side, there is a pyrite oxidation. If towards positive side, it will be gypsum or any other sources. So for higher elevated samples, the sample from the glaciated catchments, we are finding a negative sulfur isotopic signature, whereas for lower elevation samples, particularly the lower reaches, Punjab and those sectors, we are finding a very positive elevated enriched isotopic numbers, which shows like probably anthropogenic, and some gypsum and other gypsum and other N members are providing these kind of isotopic signatures. So then we saw like our samples, how it is comparing with the lower reaches samples, like the through Pariman behavior. So what we have done is like we took the samples, like this is our headwater samples, and this is the samples from them. So if you see like this, the average is about, our sample is about -4 per mil, and there is about 1 per mil, and you have a offset about 5.3 per mil, about 5 per mil offset is there. So which shows like pyrite oxidation is intense, because more the lighter side, you will have more pyrite oxidation, you can say. So you see like it's intense in headwater than the flood plain. That's the one observation. And similarly, you see the water temperature, and this is the elevation. You see, of course, elevation will be higher in our side, and their side it's a lower. And temperature, we are having lower temperature, and they have higher temperatures. So this, and of course, sulfate concentration also, you see we have a very high, about 280 per micromolar, and they have about 200 micromolar. It's not very off, but yes, some sort of difference is there. And with some sort of explains, yes, pyrite oxidation is very intense in the headwater catchments. And then we try to know if this variation is also exist for like how Indus is comparable to STP rivers. So is there any comparison? So you can see like this is for Himalayan rivers. This is some of the data we have done, and some from the earlier literature data. And then the STP rivers from the literature study, or from the China side, what has been done, that we have taken. And then you see this is the global average, and this the green one is the Indus. So it's much more depleted, and although it's have some like correlation, you can see with Mekong and some of the Tibetan rivers. But yes, they are lighter, with some sort of explains. Yes, pyrite oxidation is happening in the Indus, and it is intense in the headwater catchments. So this data is for headwater only, our data only. So yeah, this some sort of explains there are pyrite oxidation is intense. So then we also do another like mixing plot again through dual isotopes, because till now I was explaining about sulfur. So what about oxygen? So for that, what we do, people have used a delta term like delta etinosulfate H2. That is the difference between your sulfate oxygen and your water oxygen. If you subtract that, that will be your delta. So that delta number, we have taken, and also the delta 34 sulfur versus delta etino of the sulfate particularly. So if you see this diagram first, the you see like this is the pyrite from the catchment like N members. So that we have plotted. And this here is the evaporate. So far people have reported from the catchment and from the other lithology and other literatures. So you see like all of our samples, including like mainstream and most of the tributary, they are near to the pyrite end member, and they're hovering around the pyrite end members, which shows yes, the pyrite oxidation is higher in this catchment, and except few tributary samples, and where it is enriched with sulfur isotopic signature, which shows maybe because of anthropogeny, you can say, or maybe evaporate contributions are there in that. So these are the global distributions we have shown just to compare our data, how much comparable it is. So it's very much comparable our data sets. But yeah, coming to the next plot, you see here, like this is the four like different fields, which shows like where the pyrite side. So if you in the left side, you see this is the pyrite side through oxygen, when the pyrite is getting oxidized through direct oxygen or through indirect way. So this is the pyrite field, this is the evaporite or gypsum field. So this is the magmatic sulfide field. Anyway, so here also you see like most of our samples is falling near to the pyrite field. So which shows again the pyrite oxidation is intense in these catchments. So dominance of pyrite oxidation we see like it's there in our catchment. So the inverse approach that I was showing you, that we have done already. And then what we found, like this is the inversion for the cations, like your sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium. If you tell that is the summation of cations, so that we take. So you see like for different N members like rain, silicate, carbonate, hot spring, pollution, whatever N member we had. So we took that and we ran the inversion model. So you see the carbonate is from the gray one are the carbonates. So they are dominated in this catchment than the silicates, which is very like in Himalaya we understood like yes, silicate should be higher, but yes, here the scenario is little different, and our carbonate is dominated here. We are finding very high carbonate contribution here. And coming to the sulfate contribution, if you see, our pyrite is about, this is the pink one, is the light pink is the pyrite. So here the fraction that I was talking, we need a fraction how much coming from pyrite only. So here it's about 80% of pyrite is coming through, like this is for Indus. It's about 85%. And for other stream also, it's for tributaries, it is also somewhere it is about 70%, 60%, and so on. So this estimation we took, and then we move on for these calculations that we do. Like for silicate, you need a cation silicate that the previous slide shows, like the cation silicate we got the fraction, and then you multiply with your discharge area, and then you will have an uptake rate, that is the silicate weathering mediated CO2 drawdown that you will get. And then for release, what you do, like you did the all the quantification, then you have the fraction of sulfate, then you just take that sulfate, which is only derived from carbonate part, and then you take your discharge and area, you will find a oxidation rate, which is a release rate basically. So that is the CO2 release and uptake we do. And we, what is the numbers we got, like for the drawdown of silicate through silicate weathering, it's about 2, whereas for release it's about 4. It's about 2 times higher. And as a net, you see it's about 2 time, like 2 into the 5 mole CO2 per year is the release of this region. So that we try to put it in a schematic diagram again. So here you see, like for this headwater, this orange is the release rate and this blue is the offtake rate. So here it is very high, and for the headwater, but for the lower reaches it is a sink. And because in the lower reaches we don't have much physical erosion and many factors is controlling there, so we have a more offtake rate here, but we have a very high rate in the headwater region. So the conclusion for that is, like, weathering process act as a source of CO2. It's not a sink in the mountainous terrain. So I could have stopped here, but still I just wanted to show our group is actively doing that. And some of the peninsular Indian rivers we have measured, and these are the sampling locations. It was done by one of my senior. And here I have only shown by only the outflow samples only. And these are the samples which we have done. Then and some of the temporal sampling also has been done from one of the major peninsular river, that's the Mahanadi River. So there also we have done. So their isotopic signature, you see, like for the Himalayan catchment, you see for Indus and Ganga and Brahmaputra. So this color coding is the, like more blue is the lighter side, and more dark red part is your heavier side. So for Himalayan region, you see it's very lighter, and the size of the bubble is the, again, bigger the size, more heavier the isotopes. Okay, so smaller size and blue circle indicates it's a lighter isotopic signature for the Himalayan catchment, whereas for Himalayan catchment, we have a heavier isotopic signature, which shows there are probably anthropogenic, or there are other sources like gypsum or any other sources is contributing. And sometimes our protozoic pyrites are also on a higher side, but yes, they complicate the scenario. But still, you can say in a broad sense, yes, pyrite oxidation is higher in these catchments, Himalayan catchments, where it is lesser in peninsular catchments. So then we just compare these numbers. This is just a replica of this diagram. Like this is the peninsular river, this is the Himalayan rivers, and this is the global average, and it's a global distribution. So you see, for peninsular rivers, it's always in a heavier side, it's a positive side, and for Himalayan rivers, it's always in a like negative side. And this is the Indus. You see, the last one is the Indus. So these are the take home messages. Like yes, the intense oxidation is happening in the Himalayan rivers. So coming to the summary, like special investigation of pyrite oxidation in Indian river basin has been carried out using water chemistry and delta 34 sulfur and delta sulfates. And then what we found, like pyrite oxidation is higher for the Himalayan river than the peninsular Indian rivers, and mountainous regions are more prone to oxidation, and more high oxidation in the mountainous than the floodplain regions, like in the lower part of the river. And high pyrite oxidation in this river is released of the CO2 we are getting there, and the observed CO2 release rate from the northwestern Himalaya is in contrast to the previous suggested linkage like Himalaya weathering and Cenozoic cooling link. So it's a new observation, and yeah. So I'd like to thank all the collaborators and the funding agency for this study. And these are some of the pictures during this time when Corona was very active and we did not stop. We collected the samples from different parts of the rivers. And special thanks to Dr. Das. He was accompanying me during this field trip. And yeah, thank you with this great, we find no vestige of a beginning and no prospect of an end. Thank you for the patience listening. I'll be happy to take the
Okay,
questions.
thanks, Rakesh. So I think now the floor is open for taking the questions. If someone has any queries, any question, please raise your hand, and you can write in the chat box. Yeah, we have someone who raised the question. Kaushik, please unmute yourself and go ahead.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, yes, you are audible. Please go ahead.
Thank you, sir, for this wonderful talk. I have a small question that you said that in case of physical weathering and in case of higher physical weathering, the sulfide oxidation rate is higher. So in glaciation time, there is higher pyrite oxidation. So is there any implication of pyrite oxidation in geological timescale in case of glacial to interglacial transfer, as in glacial time pyrite oxidation is higher, so that CO2 is more released. Is there any implication of that particular thing?
Yes, there is a implication. So far the studies has been done. They have told like during when you have a glacier, it's not about glacial and interglacial. When you need to do a weathering for that, and I believe if it is a glacial time, it will be like everything is locked and you don't have a weathering. But you need to do weathering for that. But yes, in a glacial catchment, you will have more pyrites, and people have linked that throughout the time. I was showing you the like the plot. If I go to that again. So the first slide or second slide, here people have linked that actually. So yes, it has an implication. In a millennial time scale, it has an implication, and in a glacial and interglacial time scale, it has an implication. The more main fact is till now it was overlooked. The estimations was missing, and we don't have much data set to exactly tell when happened and how happened. But yes, there is a role, and it is affecting the glacial interglacial time scale. And sometimes people are nowadays also there telling like during this time of global warming, it has a role. Like in the Arctic region, they're telling a huge sulfide oxidation is happening and it is contributing to the global warming. So yes, there are implications. Although it is the time scale is different. Here we am talking about a millennial time scale. It's about 10 to like, Himalaya time scale is about 30, 40 millennia. I'm talking about in the millennial time scale, but yes, there is a role. Did I answer to that?
Yeah, thank you. And I have another question that you said that Himalayan river contributes more in case of this weathering. In case of another, the whole thing is that how you can predict that these are contributing more and less. In the following talk, you said these proxies. By these proxies, it is said, or there are another methods to telling that.
Yes, so no, for the sulfur and oxygen is for release only. For uptake, if you need to calculate. So I was just showing the cation silicate you need. So
Okay.
like you need to measure, you take a water, you measure all the major ions. So that is your
Yes.
cation silicate. Then you have a discharge for the river. You have an area for the river. You just multiply the cation silicate versus discharge area. That is the proxy you use for computing silicate weathering mediated CO2 drawdown. Because the
Oh,
reaction, if you see, The reaction I was just discussing this. So this is your silicate weathering. Okay.
Yeah.
So there is a CO2 drawdown. So you just measure this like Ca, HCO3, all the measurements you measure, and then you just convert it to the CO2 rate. I did not put the exact equation here, but the last part I was just telling you, the cation silicate into discharge area. So that is the computation. So that's a different proxy, not the sulfur and oxygen. This is the proxy, like cation silicate in discharge area. This is the uptake rate.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Now we have Dr. Danis. Please go ahead. Dr. Danis, we are having his voice from your background.
I can't hear you. Can you?
No, I also can't. We are not able to listen you.
Can you please write in the chat box? Probably it will be.
Okay, so Rakesh, I have one or two questions.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So you have talked about the very beautifully about sulfur isotope and its combination with oxygen isotope, and then how to use it as a weathering proxy, and just telling about the CO2 budget. So how do this post formation processes such as microbial reduction, microbial sulfur reduction, and also the seasonal hydrology or the mixing along the river course, okay? How this complicate the interpretation of sulfur and oxygen isotope together? Because there is a complications, I know.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, microbial oxidation. There is a beautiful paper by Turchian et al. In 2013. They have. So they only discussed like they have done in like the way we are doing in the headwater as well as in the floodplain. So in the floodplain sector, you have this kind of issues. Secondary sulfide can precipitate, microbial oxidation can happen. So when microbial oxidation actually happening, how it complicates, if I answer in that way, like the lighter, always biology takes the lighter one. So your isotope will be much more heavier in the lower side. So yes, it complicates the scenario, but when you involve the oxygen one, so it narrows down a little bit, like it will narrow to the other side. And then we can understand, if you only take sulfur, it will be complicated. But if you take your oxygen, the process can be much more identified, and the isotopic numbers will be narrower. So that is the main part. So in floodplain, you will have getting this kind of biology effect and so, but in headwater, this effect will not be there. And we are talking mostly about the headwater part. That is the one thing. But yes, they have a role. They will shift the isotopic systematics, and it will be complicated much more. But if you oxygen, I believe it will be much more simpler, because the sulfate oxygen, it will track. Once the sulfate bond is forming, then it doesn't change. Like once your sulfate formed, it doesn't change. If you mix with any anthropogenic, you mix with any other part, that will not change. That will retain the signature.
Okay. And just one more thing, what about the use of sulfur isotope along with the oxygen, and in distinguishing the different pyrite oxidation different sources, because sulfates sources can be many, like from the evaporized and atmospheric deposition, as well as so how do we fit the end member?
Yeah. So and remember, I was just showing you. So when sulfate and oxygen is forming, so they don't form in a separately. Here I had a plot for that. Here, can you see? So here delta
Yes,
18
yes.
of sulfate and delta 34 sulfur of oxygen. So this is the field they have marked, and you see like particularly the pyrite side. So it's a clear mixing actually. So more delta 18 sulfur and oxygen, if it is higher together, like both are positive side, it will be evaporite. If both are negative side, it will be pyrites. So they have a trend like that, because when you are oxidizing the pyrite, you need a water or you need a oxygen, atmospheric oxygen, right? So there actually oxygen is getting involved. So that is the why you have like two end members, and then you compare with your other things. And
I have
oxygen when you are
one more
involving,
question.
yeah, oxygen when you are involving, isotopic thing getting narrower. Like the first slide I was talking in one of the slide here, I was talking like if you involve delta IUPAC of sulfate.
Exactly.
So it will be 15, and here it will be minus 2 to 4 per mil in that range. So that is
So the range is.
Yeah, ranges will be narrower, and then you have the opportunity to do the mass balance. Of course, without inversion, it will be much more difficult to compute each n member. But yes, we have that opportunity to take the inversion.
Can you check the chat box, or should I read it for you?
Okay, I can check. But yeah, there are a lot of messages. Okay, so I think this was asked by Daniswaya. How much CO2 released by organic matter remulation differ by CO2 released by? Yeah, so another part is organic oxidation. So in the black cell, you will have a organic carbon. If you oxidize that, that will release the CO2. So sulfide oxidation is higher for here. Here we are getting around 4. For organic, we are getting around 1.5 to 2 mole per kilometers per year. So it's about 2 times higher sulfide oxidation we are getting here. But yeah, organic oxidation is also a part. I am also doing our subsequent paper in coming to that. It's in a preparation mode. So there we are seeing it's about 2 times lesser actually organic oxidation there. And the next, can you share DOI of the article of macro? Okay, I will share to now you want. So it's a microbial oxidation is in Turchia et al. 2013. It's a EPSL paper. I can give that.
You can just forward it to me, and then I will forward to him.
I will just write here.
Perfect.
Et al. 2013 EPSL. Secondary sulfide precipitation. The ID name is paper title is secondary sulfide precipitation. I can just type this. This will come. Yeah. If you don't find, I can share that.
Okay, so anyone else, if you have questions?
If Danish already have any other aspect, I can answer to that.
Okay. So, okay, if not, then I'll have one. Okay, he's asking that will be reduction.
No. It will add actually. It will not be reduction. So basically, we are talking here in a lower side. So if you add again organic oxidation, it will be like it's a release, right? It's not a drawdown. You are asking about remineralization, organic burial. You are telling, or oxidation part you are telling. I'm sorry. So you are telling about organic burial, right? Okay. I got it now. So okay. So earlier studies, like there are studies where people have done both organic oxidation and organic burial. So he's telling about organic matter remineralization. That means I think it's about burial. So that is a sink of CO2. So people have done that. It's a very famous paper by Galli et al. 2021 and 15. They have done a great job. It's in Nature. So what they're telling in any river catchment in a basinal scale, if you see, organic oxidation and organic burial will be balanced sometime. They used to be balanced. So if I consider that, if you are telling organic burial is there, organic oxidation will be also there. Just 1 minute. Let me finish. If you are telling your organic oxidation is there. Okay.
That was not the question about reduction. Actually, I was asking, someone was asking this microbial sulfide, microbial something related to you were talking about now. So so it will be oxidation or it will be reduction? I think it will be reduction.
Yeah, microbial will be reduction, but then it will reprecipitate your sulfide. Your secondary sulfide will reprecipitate there again.
And my question was related to this organic matter remineralization was related to the catchment or means remineralization of the organic matter, because so the rivers generally behaves heterotropics because of the organic matter remineralizations, and they supply lot of CO2 to there. So you are saying that you have compared that the sulfide oxidation will supply more as compared to the organic matter remineralization, or it is particularly related to the lithology?
For our basin, yes, it will be related to lithology and the setting how it is. But for our basin, for headwater catchment, when we are talking for Indus, so organic oxidation is lesser than sulfide oxidation. That is one part. And then the remineralization means are you mentioning about the burial, like it is getting trapped?
No. I'm just talking about the remineralizations only. You have organic matter and it is oxidizing. That's it.
Then it will release. It will not be reduction. It will release CO2, right?
Of course. Yes,
Yeah,
yes. It
that
will
will be
release
add
the.
again. Yeah, that will be
Yes.
again add to our like estimations. Like when you're getting 4, it will be again 6. So
Okay.
it will be an addition to that. Yeah.
Okay. So you did this calculation by taking the abundance of the organic matter in the black shell.
Now for that, we have a technique called rhenium. So we take the rhenium as well as TOC, total organic carbon. Yes, we take everything actually. Then the ratio you took. So there is a formula for that. Like you take the measure the rhenium in your water mass. You measure the rhenium in sediment mass, and then you convert that to ratio TOC by RE ratio. Then you multiply with discharge area. You will have a CO2 release rate. That we have done, and we saw it
Yes.
is less.
But how you will differentiate between the organic matter of black shells and the organic matter in the catchments, which forms in aerobic conditions, never gone through anaerobic conditions where you will trap this rhenium. You just So how you will differentiate between that? Because so you are talking about this one.
Okay, got your point. So there again, if you want to know the organic oxidation part, so there we use 14C. That is first part. So there you will have a dead carbon. We'll have a so the thing that I believe you are talking. So black cell is always a dead carbon, right? So it's formed
Hmm.
in a time scale. So that's a dead carbon. So but now if you currently you are seeing the biology, so there it will be your recent phytoplankton or anything, whatever is there, your biology. So
Hmm.
there we measure 14C in the sediments first. So that is the first part actually. We measure 14C, we separate them. Then there are a lot of complications again. So there it will be graphite organic carbon that you need to find like separate. Then we do that actually because that is the way. You measure your TOC and then you put 14C mass balance, you separate them. Then we have only remaining with your black cell one. There we used to talk. So the recent organic carbon that you are talking, so they don't affect in the way you are telling. Some CO2 will be completely oxidized there in the basin itself, and some will go to the ocean directly, like the wax and those things
No,
which are
but recent mass balance equations for this carbon. So
yeah,
they shows that the inland water bodies, they supplies lot of CO2 to the atmosphere because of the organic matter remineralizations
yeah, I
through the
agree. I
oxidation
agree.
process.
It will be there
So
definitely.
yeah, so
CO2 can
they
be
they
applied to that.
yes, and basically organic matter you will found in every catchment wherever you go because
Yeah,
life is everywhere.
definitely. It will be there
Yeah.
always. But
So I'm
we
asking
are
that.
talking about yeah,
Okay,
petrogenic part only we consider
okay,
because that
okay, okay,
yeah.
okay. Now
So,
I got your point. So you are
so
saying
in the
that
black cell,
when you just weathered a black shell, then
yeah,
in that black shells, your pyrite oxidation is contributing more as compared to the organic matter which is in the that black shells particularly, not the
yeah,
whole organic matter. Because
not the
what I
whole, yeah,
what
that
I
is,
sense
yeah.
what I sense is that the whole organic matter is dominant processes for supplying this CO2 to the atmosphere. This is what I believe.
I agree to that. Maybe for that we need to find the other proxy which is beyond our study probably. But yes, we do not do that for recent how this like organic community is there and how to do that as a beyond the study. But yes, uh, that is the possibility, and there we will have more CO2. You can
Okay.
release lot of
I have
that
one
part.
more quick questions, the small questions. So there is another minerals which we found related to this sulfur is iron monosulfide. So let's say if you have iron monosulfides and if you have the pyrite, and both are going under the oxidation processes. So what is the signature you expect means for both?
First of all, pyrite is the dominant one. In any sulfide group you see, pyrite is the most dominant one. You don't find a monosulfide and this kind of thing. That's the first answer to that. And if you oxidize both of them, if there is any species you take arsenopyrite, you take pyrite, you take any species where you have a reduced sulfur, you oxidize it, you will get a sulfuric acid. Once you have the sulfuric acid, there the sulfur cycle starts. You have the sulfur oxygen and you have the
I'm asking
sulfate.
about the isotopic signature, how the isotopic signature will different. This is what I'm asking.
Iron monosulfide means then I'll ask so which pool you are talking. So if you're iron monosulfide, it will be reduced sulfur is there. So your
Yes, of
isotopic
course, it
numbers
is
will be
reduced
lighter,
sulfur only.
and
It
pyrite
is
will be
reduced.
pyrite will be multiple types. Like which pyrite we are talking? It's sedimentary pyrite, so igneous pyrite. If it's sedimentary, the one
No,
compilers
it's sedimentary only.
then it will be 10 to minus.
Diagenetically formed.
Yeah, it will be plus 10 to minus 50 per mil for sedimentary pyrite if you tell. So I feel it will overlap. The signature will overlap. It will not be very off. The signature will overlap, but it will be lower side for monosulfide, but will higher side for sedimentary sulfide. Like plus
Okay.
10 to minus 50 can go for sedimentary sulfide, but for monosulfide you can say plus 10 to minus 10. That range it will vary.
Okay, thank you, Rakesh.
Thank you.
Okay, so Rakesh, I'll wrap up this session just by asking one just not a question, but just your view on this. What do you think about the pyrite oxidation driven CO2 release from the from the Himalaya? Is it unique, or this kind of things can equally be important for other ozonic belt in
I'm
the
sorry, last part I
group?
missed. Can you just repeat last part?
What do you think of the pyrite oxidation driven CO2 release is unique in Himalayan uh, region, like as your work says, or it could be equally important for other orogenic system
Okay. And
globally?
got it. Yeah. Globally, it is important wherever you have higher physical. So in Andes, people have done it. Like in Amazon, people have done it. In Mackenzie, people have done it. Yes, it is there at global scale. But in Himalaya, it is intense because of two main things. One is your glacier coverage. One is your high physical erosion. So that is the main factor in Himalaya. So Himalaya, it is intense. Maybe it's about 2 times we are talking here. It's upset 2 times of the silicate ozoning, but there the balance is somewhere 50-50. Like now our case it is offsetting 2 times, but there maybe it's 50-50 balanced, and sometimes it is in Andes, of course it is higher because they are told it's about 1/5 of the thing they are releasing. So yeah, it's everywhere, but wherever you'll have higher, in Himalaya it is more.
Okay, so if you don't have any questions, so I think I will wrap up this session. Thanks, Rakesh, for accepting our invitation and giving this wonderful talk. I think the concept of sulfide oxidation from the sulfur isotope and combining the oxygen isotope is, I think, it's a very great talk to have this kind of information. And thank you so much again. And we'll share this talk on YouTube, and we'll share the link between all of you. So thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you all.